Hello there, people of the internet. Today we're going to go over some ballistics and history of the 7mm-08. It is a cartridge that was produced by Remington, and we're going to go pretty in-depth on the cartridge, and we're going to give my take as to whether or not it would or would not be a good hunting cartridge. So all this being said, I'm doing this in an effort to try and earn my way up to 100,000 subscribers. So if you like this kind of content, you're among the right crowd. Go ahead and subscribe, and that will help me reach that goal. So the 7mm-08, let's go ahead and talk about a little bit of history behind this cartridge. It's not a military cartridge, but it is based off of, sort of, a military cartridge. So, the 7mm-08 is a design that came out in the 1980s, and it was designed by Remington. It's almost a direct copy of a Wildcat cartridge that came out in the 1950s, mid-1950s, I believe 1953, called 7mm/308. And what it is it is essentially a 308 case that has been necked down to a 7mm diameter projectile. As a little comparison, I have an actual 308. This is technically 7.62 NATO, but the cases are gosh darn near identical. The only difference is the 308 has a 308 diameter bullet, and the 7mm-08 actually has a 284 diameter bullet on it. So why would somebody want to neck this down? It pretty much equates to being better at long range accuracy. So, you know what, since I have these two cartridges here, I'll go ahead and compare them. This right here is the 7mm-08 compared to a 30-06. So the cases are going to be a little bit different. Of course, the 308 is a little bit shorter than 30-06, but there you go. Now you have a good size comparison between those different cartridges. So this right here is a cartridge that is not very popular nowadays in comparison to, say, a 308. 308 just has such a following behind it that a cartridge that is based off of that cartridge, like any cartridge based off of the original cartridge, if the original cartridge is overwhelmingly popular, is going to be shadowed by that original cartridge. Like, for example, 30-06 absolutely overshadows basically everything that the 30-06, or that is based off of the 30-06. So the 7mm-08, this right here is a relatively new cartridge since it has been made in the 1980s. And Remington tried making it popular, and for the most part, they did a pretty gosh darn good job considering that they're going up against the popularity of the 308 Winchester, which is an overwhelmingly popular cartridge. So 7mm-08, let's have a look at some ballistic capabilities of this cartridge. So 7mm-08, if we have a 140 grain projectile inside of this cartridge, it's going to be firing at about 2,800 or so feet per second. So, alright, yeah, that's pretty on par with what you would expect from a neck down 308 round. It's going to have about 2,400 foot-pounds of energy onto its target. It's not exactly an overwhelming powerhouse of a cartridge, but it was never really intended or designed to be. If you want a more powerful round, go with something like 30-06, or if you want even more powerful than that, 300 Win Mag is a thing that exists. So if we bump this up to a little bit heavier bullet, we have a 150 grain projectile from a 7mm-08. It's going to be traveling at about 2,650 feet per second. So a little bit slower than our 308/7.62 NATO round, which is the parent case. If we had a 150 grain projectile in a 308, it would be traveling at about 2,800 or so feet per second versus the 150 grain in the 7mm-08 traveling at about 2,650 feet per second. So a little bit less for the same weight bullet. You're going to get about 2,350 foot-pounds of energy transferred onto that target, which is still quite a lot, all things considered. A little bit of comparison. I think a 9mm handgun round is about 400, a little bit over 400 foot-pounds of energy transferred onto target, and I certainly would not want to get hit by that. So this full-power rifle cartridge is absolutely quite a bit of energy transferred. So if we increase the weight a little bit, I seem to notice that the 7mm-08 does better with heavier weight projectiles than it does with lighter weight projectiles. Increase the weight a little bit to 175 grain projectiles. We are going to be traveling a little bit slower, but not by much, only about 2,600 feet per second. So 50 feet per second slower than a 150 grain projectile. We're going to have about 2,600 foot-pounds of energy transferred onto the target. So that's another 250 foot-pounds of energy on target with your heavier bullet than your lighter weight bullets from your 7mm-08, which is quite a bit. That is quite a bit. To put that into perspective, that is actually a little bit over what a 22 long rifle puts out. So that would be the equivalency of getting shot with a 22 long rifle, that difference in level of energy, and I certainly would not want to be hit with a 22 long rifle. For the most part, these are going to be your more popular loadings for the 7mm-08, so unless you're a hand loader or something like that, these are typically going to be the ones that you find. And if you are a hand loader, then the specifications that I'm giving out right now are completely null and void, because a hand loader can do whatever it is that they want. So would I recommend this as a good hunting cartridge? Honestly, for the area that I am in, I would not recommend something like this, and hear me out on that. I actually have a friend of mine who uses the 7mm-08, and he uses it very effectively. We go on hunts every now and then. And we're actually planning on going on a deer hunt this year over in Sherrod Island here in the state of Florida. And he has his 7mm-08, and it does serve him well. But the 7mm-08 is a 7mm projectile, 284, and whenever you're firing through thick brush, which is what we will be in, seeing as we're going to be in, you know, the swamps and jungles, that smaller diameter projectile just does not hold itself well to not flying apart or deviating whenever you're punching through, whenever you're trying to punch through things, and we will be punching through things such as leaves and sticks and wood and organic matter of all sorts, in which case a larger diameter projectile just makes a better brush gun, because it's able to punch through multiple things if it has to stay on target to be able to reach its intended destination. So the 7mm-08, yeah, it absolutely could be used in an area like I'm in, but it's definitely not an ideal cartridge for an area like what I'm in. Now, if you're out in an open area and you need to shoot over long distances, ballistically speaking, it is going to behave better than its larger diameter counterparts. So maybe 7mm-08 might be a good choice for you if you are in an area like that. So I guess it all depends on what it is that your needs are, and of course this is kind of indicative for basically every cartridge that exists. There is no one do-everything cartridge. So 7mm-08, I would say probably not for the area that I am in, but it absolutely has its applications out there, depending on the place that you are at. Personally, I would lean towards, or more towards 308 myself, only because of ammunition availability and price point, and the 308 just does better punching through stuff than 7mm-08 does. So all this being said, thanks for watching, folks. Appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below is a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day, and I will see you guys on the next episode.
Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.